Hey guys, Logan here. We're back in the build room today. Do a little segment on nitrous. We're going to take a break from our choices series, and I had a customer who called me. Actually, I had two customers call me and ask me some nitrous questions. So I felt like I needed to do a video about nitrous. There is a ton of stuff to cover with nitrous. There's no way I'm going to cover it all in a 20-minute-ish video, but I'm going to do the best to highlight all the things that you need to know to run nitrous, and then I encourage you to do your own research and figure out all the ins and outs of it, and we'll go from there. So, jumping in to nitrous.
1, 2, 3.
The first thing, if you're new to nitrous, that you're going to hear is dry kits and wet kits. We're talking about diesel drag racing here. In diesel drag racing, you run a dry nitrous kit. You do not run a wet kit. That is because a wet kit has fuel that is injected when the nitrous is injected. This is common for alcohol and gas-powered cars. We are not able to inject diesel fuel into our cylinders with nitrous. So everything that is going to pertain to you guys, if you're racing a diesel, is going to be a dry nitrous kit. All of the content in this video is going to cover if you're a street guy or a full race guy. All of this stuff stays completely the same. So that's why I didn't do like a class board and stuff this time with all the, lining it out and stuff, because really if you're running nitrous, all of this stuff matters for you. So if you're going to be a diesel racer, like you've decided, you're pretty much going to be married to running nitrous. To go fast, you need it. To spool up quick, for the most part, you need it. So nitrous is going to be something that you need to get comfortable with and need to get familiar with. We've covered the wet versus dry kits. So the next thing, and I'm not going to spend much time on this, is brands. There is a bunch of different brands out there, induction solution, nitrous outlet, nitrous oxide system, NX. There's a ton of brands out there. It's 2021. The nice thing we have about racing in this day and age is that there's a lot of good companies out there, and they all pretty much provide you the same quality parts. So there's no substitute for quality parts in drag racing. So I would recommend you just pick a brand that you like and ride with them. So when you're looking at these nitrous kits and you're trying to figure out what is applicable for your situation, there's going to be several things like bottle size, solenoid size, line size, jetting that you need to take into consideration. Me personally, I don't care what it's on. I want to run a 15-pound bottle. They have 10-pound bottles. They even have some little Sneaky Pete bottles, but a 15-pound bottle is what I want to run, because you only have half of that amount of usable nitrous. So if you have a 15-pound bottle, you have 7.5 pounds of good usable nitrous. So what that means is if you weighed your bottle, it's going to have a bottle weight on the tag. It's going to say this bottle should weigh, for this one, be like 32 pounds when it's full. That is the weight of the bottle and the nitrous content inside of it. So if you're running a lot of nitrous, or you're running your nitrous often, you're going to be pulling this bottle out of the truck and you're going to be weighing it. Sometimes, once you do it a few times, you'll know how many passes you can get out of a bottle, roughly. But in the beginning, you're going to be pulling this out every pass and weighing it. And if this is a 32-pound bottle, and we know we only have 7.5 pounds of usable nitrous in it, once this bottle gets down to 25 pounds, actually 26 pounds, I'm pulling it out and changing it for another bottle. This is a big thing that a lot of people don't consider. I've had customers call me and say, man, I'm using this nitrous and it's not doing nothing. And I know I haven't used that much, and I haven't used 15 pounds worth. Well, the last half of what's in there is not liquid nitrous. It's basically just pressure. It has some weight to it, but it is not good usable nitrous. It's not going to work. So check your bottles, weigh your bottles. With a 10-pound bottle, you have 5 pounds of usable nitrous. So if it's something that you're really, really weight conscious about and you don't want the extra weight of the little bit bigger bottle, and you're fine with buying more bottles and changing it more between rounds and stuff, then the 10-pound bottle is fine. For an example, as far as usage goes, like on JP's truck, we had 2 solenoids. We had a 120 jet and a 78 jet, and then we were using anywhere between a 38 and a 44 jet for spool up that we were leaving on towards the end. That we were using about 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds of nitrous per pass. So every 2 passes, I was changing bottles in that truck. So just something to consider, how much nitrous you're going to run. Kind of dictates what bottle you're going to get. And then as far as the solenoid sizes go, I personally wouldn't buy anything that's smaller than a 120 solenoid unless it is specifically and only for a spool jet. The size of your nitrous solenoid is going to dictate how much nitrous you can flow through it. So if it's a 120 solenoid, you're not going to flow any more than a 120 jet. That is something I see a lot of people, oh, I put a 136 jet in it, or I put a 155 jet in it. Well, it doesn't matter how big that is, or if it's just an open line, the solenoid is only flowing 120 thousandths. That's all the nitrous that you have present. With that being said, don't take your nitrous line off. Take the jet out and screw it back together and run it like that, because the jet has a ferrule fitting, and that is actually sealing off your boost. So not only are you going to have a boost leak, but you're going to have a nitrous leak too. So that's not going to work. FedEx is here. I got to see these guys, and then I'll come right back. Okay, back to solenoid sizes. A 177 solenoid size is a common size. That is a very large solenoid. That's going to allow you to use up to 177 thousandths jet. One thing to consider when you get into these larger systems is the size of your feed line. A lot of the entry-level kits will come with a 110, a 120. Sometimes I've seen some little, 80, 90-ish solenoids. Those are usually going to have like a -4 feed line from your bottle to the solenoid. They're fine for that, but if you're trying to run a bunch of nitrous, say you want to run 4 or 5 stages of nitrous, you really need to run a larger diameter, get into a -6, -8. That kind of depends on your nitrous system and how you spec it out. And nobody knows more about nitrous than the nitrous manufacturers. So when you're calling to order this stuff, tell them exactly what you're doing. Tell them how many kits you want to run. They're going to size you out a kit that's proper for what you're doing. So we've covered the solenoid sizes now, and we've covered the line sizes, so let's talk jet sizes. This is something else that a lot of people get confused on or don't necessarily understand. So take a 38 jet for an example. 38 jet is a great spool jet. It's not going to make a ton of horsepower. You'll probably make about 40-ish horsepower on a 38 jet. And now that totally depends on how much fuel you have present. There's other factors there. But roughly that's about 40 horsepower. If you take that jet and say you stick a 72 jet in it, and you think that is double the amount of nitrous, that is incorrect. That is actually more like triple the amount of nitrous. When you're thinking about jet sizes, you have to think about area of a circle. If you do the math on the area of a circle, just because it's numerically double the number, it is a lot more surface area in that circle, so you're using a lot more nitrous. So if you have, say, a spool jet, and it's right on the edge where you think you could take just a little bit more nitrous to spool it up just a little bit quicker, so you go and take a 30 jet and you say, I just want to give it just a little bit more, and you stick a 52 in it because numerically that's not that much more, that thing will probably pop and cough and kill the engine, because you have just put over double the amount of nitrous in it. If you think you're on the edge, do small jumps. Go from a 38 to a 41 and see what that does. The time in which you turn the nitrous on, how much fuel you have present when the nitrous comes on, how much heat is in the engine, the converter stall is all going to matter on your spool up, how well it can accept the nitrous. So spool up is one of those things that you just need to play with, and you're going to be running it, okay, turning it on at this RPM. No, I feel like you could take more, or no, it didn't take that. Let's raise the RPM up. It's just a lot of trial and error when it comes to that stuff. The bottle pressure is something that a lot of people miss. If you just go by this gauge on this bottle, first off, you really don't know what the actual bottle pressure is. We have 4 bottles for JP's truck, and I have seen these gauges be as much as 200 psi difference between bottles. You really need to get, if you're going to be serious about using nitrous, especially if you're using it for down track, and you need some sort of data acquisition, you need some way of monitoring this more accurately than just this gauge, because think about pressure and volume. You could take a fixed volume amount, so say a fixed jet size, and put 900 psi of nitrous pressure to it. That's going to give you X results. If you take and put 1100 psi in that same solenoid, you have just increased the amount of nitrous going into the engine. So you could have say you're at home doing your spool ups, testing spool up, and you've got it dialed in. This thing comes right up and it's snappy and you like it. And you're not putting a bottle heater on this thing, and it's 55, 60 degrees outside that day, and your bottle pressure's 900 psi, and you go to the racetrack on a hot day and you're not monitoring pressure, and this bottle is 1200 psi, that nitrous isn't even going to work. It's just going to pop, and you're not going to be able to spool because you just essentially doubled or possibly tripled the amount of nitrous that you're trying to use. So when you're doing tuning and you're doing testing and you're doing spool ups, bottle pressure is very important to monitor. You change bottle pressure with the bottle heater. That's how you can run it up and down. And most bottle heaters, you just plug into a generator, heat them up. If you have a way of controlling, like a smart wire, you can wire them into your battery, so your battery will monitor the temperature, or the pressure, I should say, and change the temperature. So basically, you would set a condition to where bottle pressure has to be greater than 900 psi, less than 1000 psi, and it's going to turn the bottle heater on and off every time it gets outside of those parameters, so you can maintain a more consistent bottle pressure. As far as a pressure to shoot for, we shoot for 950 when we're going to the starting line. That's the lower the pressure that you start to run with, the more consistent the pressure remains throughout the entire run. If you go up there with 11 or 1200 psi, by the end of the run, that thing's going to be down to 900, 950 psi. On a gas car, that's how you send hood scoops flying into the air.
All right, here we go.
On a diesel, that's just really inconsistent on your run, and you're making a lot less power at the end of the run as you are at the beginning of the run. Usually it makes it really hard for you to 60-foot well, front half well, because you're too aggressive with the nitrous on the front half, and then you don't have the nitrous that you think you have on the back half, so really the whole run kind of gets thrown in the toilet when you do that. If you try to shoot for a 9 to 950 psi, it's going to be 895, 900, 910 by the end of the run. You have a lot more consistent bottle pressure across the run. Another thing with bottle pressure is you need a purge solenoid. If you go up there and your bottle has gotten too hot, say you're not using your battery to control it, you don't have a way of controlling it, you're just doing it yourself with a generator, and you're sitting on the starting line and you look down at your data and it's 1100 psi, well, you need to be able to escape that pressure. A lot of people think that a purge is just to get the air out of the system. It does do that, but it's also to get your bottle pressure back down into reality of where it needs to be. So usually, like on JP's truck, if I'm shooting for 950 psi, I want that thing about 970 before the burnout. Just doing the spool up for the burnout's going to use a little bit, and then when I back up, I'm purging that thing down to, trying to get it dead nuts 950 when I pull up into the beam, so I can have the most consistent run possible. So the purge is something that you definitely want to have in that aspect. As far as nozzle locations, this kind of goes back to the spool up, and this matters down track as well. The closer the nozzle is to the intake of the engine, the snappier it's going to be, but the colder the nitrous is going to be, so it's going to be harder to take it until the engine's up and making a bunch of steam. Nitrous comes out at negative 136 degrees, so if you try to take, like on my truck, I run a 50 jet, and it's pre-intercooler, so it's closer to the turbo, far away from the intake runner. I can turn that thing on way sooner and use a bigger jet than how, like on JP's truck, we were running the spool jet right by the intake. We were never able to turn on more than a 44 right there, and we had to turn it on with higher RPM because it's so cold, it makes the engine want to cough. It doesn't want that cold air when it's trying to come up into boost. It makes it snappier, so it takes the nitrous quicker and makes it come up quicker, but it's a devil's advocate of location versus how much you can use. I'm a fan of both ways. It's just kind of depends on what you want to do. I generally tell people start with the nitrous spool jet over closest to the turbo. Let the intercooler and the intake charge take some of that chill out of it before it gets to the engine. And then down track to consider is the same concept. The closer to the intake, the snappier it's going to be. So if you want it to be on quicker, if you want your first stage to really hit the engine right away, put it right there by the intake. If you don't want it to hit it right away, so that way you can run a bigger nozzle size, put it over on the other side of the intercooler. That way you could turn more on and it won't be quite as hard and it won't upset the chassis. When it comes to the amount of stages that you run, that's where you could play with a lot of things too. On JP's truck, we only had 2 stages. So that meant that we had to use as much nitrous as we could on both stages. The problem with that is that when you're trying to PWM, basically flash turn on solenoids, pulse width management, you are basically, as Ryan Milliken has described it to me, and I love this analogy, it's like hitting it with a sledgehammer a bunch of times, because you have this big giant solenoid that you're trying to turn on, and you're basically trying to hammer it in, and it's you might as well just turn it on, because you can see even in the G meter when it starts to get like 40 to 80% on the pulse width, you can actually watch it kind of spike the G meter a little bit, and that's not really helpful for the run. You would be way better off to use, instead of 2 big stages trying to get it all in as soon as you could, try using 4 or 5 stages that you just kind of tickle it in. I imagine like the sound of a xylophone where it's like that is going to be a much smoother way to apply your power and end up using the same amount of nitrous as 2 big kits that you're trying to take a bass drum and beat them in there. So, more kits cost more money, but if you're really trying to go fast, the guys that do go fast, they're using multiple stages, they're using smaller jet sizes, and they're ramping them in. When you use a nitrous controller, that's what we're talking about for PWMing. When you PWM, don't set your parameter 0 to 100. Start off at 30, because below 30%, that solenoid isn't even opening. So you're losing time of your nitrous not even being on from 0 to 30 on your timing ramp. So like a NX5 or the NOS launcher, like what we have in JP's, it's basically going to give you a little graph, and it's going to have time versus hertz. Hertz is how quickly it's pulsing the solenoid until it gets to 100. That number stays the same, and then you change the time. So like JP's first kit, we were bringing on over 1.5 seconds. So we would start at 30 to 100 over 1.5. If we started at 0 to 100 over 1.5, up until it got to 30 hertz, there would be no nitrous on. That would totally change the way we run the truck, the way we run the chassis. It wouldn't like that. So always remember to start at 30 hertz on a nitrous controller. The only other thing that I'm going to say that is crucial that a lot of people overlook is bottle angle. Technically, the bottles need to be 15 degrees from horizontal. You'll see a lot of guys, like in my truck, I run a vertical bottle. It's mounted to the roll cage, to the main hoop, so it's straight up and down. On JP's, we had a bottle mount that was mounted to the floor, that was an angle. You can run it either way. But if you run a bottle with less than 15 degrees, the gas and the liquid nitrous starts to actually mix, and you don't end up with a good nitrous mix. And sometimes you won't have any nitrous at all because you're just putting the gas to it, not the actual liquid nitrous. So bottle angles need to be at 15 degrees. Where you place the bottles is going to matter for your, one, how much nitrous that you're wasting, and two, being able to control the pressure. I don't personally like nitrous bottles out in the bed of the truck because it's hot at the racetrack. The sun's beating on those things. It's really hard to control pressure. You know, you've got to keep a wet blanket over it to keep it cool. It's a lot more chasing it around. I like it to be in the cab, so at least it's not getting direct sun. It makes it a little bit easier to manage that way. And it's a little bit less weight because you're not running all that nitrous line all the way back. If you are going to mount one in the bed or far away from your solenoids, I would recommend using a quarter turn valve as close to the bottle as possible, so that way you're not wasting all the nitrous in that line. If you have a -6 or 8 line and your solenoid's on the firewall and your bottle's in the bed of the truck, that's, 6, 8 feet, 10 feet of line that's full of nitrous, that every time you change your bottle, it's just wasting all that nitrous. So if you put a quarter turn valve close to it, at least you can block off the nitrous in the lines, put your new bottle in, open it back up, and you didn't waste all the nitrous in the lines. When it comes to getting nitrous bottles filled, every place is a little different. Some people have pumps, some people don't have pumps. If you're using your nitrous often and getting it filled a lot, and you live in the summer or live in somewhere that's swampy in the summer, a lot of humidity, it's a good idea to drain, to just open the bottle up all the way a couple times a year and let all of everything in there out. Those things will get moisture inside of them. It's good to drain them and dry them every once or twice. But other than that, don't just go and open your bottle up and let it all out, because that's essentially wasting money, because a lot of that pressure can just stay in there. So then when you fill it with new nitrous, it's not going to cost you as much. I mean, some of these nitrous places are charging $10 to $13, $14 a pound for nitrous. So if you're a guy that just uses it every now and then, don't go and throw your money away because you're letting all your pressure out of your bottle. If you're going to run nitrous a lot, if you're going to race competitively where you need a lot of nitrous, get a nitrous fill station. You can get the whole kit for about $1,500 from a couple of different manufacturers. Then you got to get your local supplier to give you a mother bottle and stuff. It's about a $2,000-ish investment, but it's well worth it for how much cheaper you can get nitrous per pound. And you don't technically have to have the whole fill station if you don't want to. A lot of guys just get a mother bottle, get a heater for the bottle. They got a quarter turn valve with a filter in it and a little line. You freeze your bottle, your nitrous bottle, heat up your mother bottle, and then the coldness of your frozen bottle and the hot from your mother bottle will suck the nitrous into your new bottle. That is one way to do it too. The fill stations are just way faster. So if you're going to run nitrous on any amount of level where you're going to be going through a lot of it, do yourself and your wallet a favor. You'll pay for that fill station in the first year. Like always, I'm sure I've missed something with this. There's a lot of information to try to condense down. Like I said, there's a ton of information out there on the internet. Don't take everything I said as church. This is just to get you thinking about what you need to do and how you want to run your nitrous system. Go out there and talk to these nitrous guys and figure it all out. See what you want to run, what brand, and that's all I got for you guys. Like always, be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what I missed and tell me what you think of this video. Thanks. Catch you on the next one.